Hi, everyone, and welcome to Across Genres Creative Writing Week. I'm Karen Helene, and I want to thank you for joining in to tonight's session on the memoir. I want to mention if you missed Monday night on Creative Nonfiction or Tuesday on the short story with writer Bridget Shade, you'll want to go back and check those out. They're on my YouTube channel. Bridget did a fantastic job, gave us plenty of valuable information, and left us with two wonderful prompts. I also want to mention if you're looking for information on contacting me or information about our speaker, underneath the presentation, you'll see some information there. And also, if you can take a minute to like and subscribe, I appreciate that. And now, without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce you to tonight's author, Maureen O'Brien. And Maureen has a recent memoir out. That's why she's covering our topic on memoir. But like all the other writers, she's an across genre writer. So she's had a poetry collection and a novel, and she's had short stories published. So, Maureen, if you don't mind, would you tell us a little about yourself?
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me. So I have been teaching creative writing at a school called the Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts for a long time. And I teach creative writing to teenagers, which I really, really love. And that has allowed me to support myself as a writer while I am writing and talking craft and doing cross-genre work, that type of thing. So I published my first book. Bee Mother was published a long time ago, which came out right when we first went to Ireland together. That was 2007 when we crossed paths. And I do love the form of the novel. I never thought I would write a novel. And then I did publish a short collection of poems after that. And then I had a bunch of hardships in my life that I just was not publishing for a while. And then I had been working on a memoir about the life's difficulties that I had had. And that turned into this version of What Was Lost. And this is What Was Lost right here. So this is the book that just came out. And what happened was I was approached by Franciscan Media to do a book on the Psalms. And it just all worked out that I took almost all of the material that I had been working on in the form of the memoir before, and I plugged the whole, it's like an overarching theme and a through line of my connection to the Psalms as poetry and how they got me through those hard times. So this was like the final frontier, the final version. And I had broken up with my agent over the previous version of the memoir because it just wasn't working, and I didn't really know what to do about it. So I guess that's a long way of saying I take a long time to do things. I take a long time to process and think, and I'm a slow writer, but I do eventually get there. And so that's basically what my process has been. This particular book, switching to memoir, I had said I would never ever write a memoir. There's just no way I would ever write a memoir because it was just too risky, too personal, nowhere to hide. And so the very earliest version of this book I had sent to a friend of mine and her husband, who are awesome editors. And he has since passed. His name was Sean. And Sean and Robin had given me feedback, and it was the novel form. And Sean said, Maureen, I don't think this is going to work as a novel. I really think you're writing a memoir. And I said, I would never do that. I would never, ever work in the form of the memoir. And I did end up doing it. I just had so much fear about the, the vulnerability, the just being exposed, I guess, being seen, fear of my family members. There's sort of go on and on and on, I guess. But once I started working in the form of memoir, I absolutely fell in love with it. And now I want to do another one. I have ideas for the one after this, not exactly a sequel, but I did end up finding my voice in Memoir. I feel very comfortable with the voice that I found. I feel very comfortable now, but it really took like maybe 4 years to really get into the genre and figure out, well, how do I want to sound? Who do I want to be? And can I still make it lyrical? Because that's really important to me. And, you know, now I just love it. Now I actually really have a hard time reading fiction. I just only really read memoir for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Not that during the pandemic I've read at all. I don't want to make it sound like I'm reading anything. Really haven't read a whole lot. So that's about it, really.
All right. Well, I do want to tell everyone, whether they're catching this live or later, that we would love to hear from you. And I also want to say what an amazing, beautiful writer you are. Back to Be Mother. I loved that book. I loved your novel. I love your poetry. And of course, I'm in the middle of reading. And I know what you mean about personal. And as I'm reading some of them, it's bringing to mind different stories that, I might share, but I had that same feeling. Oh gosh, would I be brave enough to do that? So I understand why you feel that way. But I think the memoir is a popular form because it makes it so easy for us. You're sharing universal themes that,
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be able to connect with, what the writer had gone through, at least to some degree. So,
Yeah. I think that's definitely true. And the one thing that I'm very grateful for with this book is that when I started reading the Psalms, it was during the time when I felt the most alone. So it was right after my cancer diagnosis, and then when I had gotten into an accident right in my own driveway and shattered my wrist, and then I got divorced that next summer. So it was just everything was coming together at once. And so when I started reading the Psalms, it was really this feeling of intense existential loneliness that I just felt incredibly almost like banished, I would say, as a human. Even though I was still in my neighborhood and doing things and going to the grocery store, internally I felt banished and very alone. And when I started reading the Psalms, it gave me so much comfort because so many of the Psalms are just about calling out, lament, being alone, wondering why have we been abandoned here? So the through line of that, what the feedback that I've been getting on the book, people have been telling me that they enjoy thinking about these topics and realizing that maybe they aren't alone. If you do believe in higher power, spirit, God, Mary, whatever language you use, to really trust that you're not alone, that there is something there. There is something larger than us that really is there. So that's really what the Psalms brought me. And publishing about it, though, I was really scared because it is really intimate. It is my faith. Also, my faith is always evolving, and I was nervous about putting a book out that, well, this is what I believe now at the end of 2020 going into 2021, but I'm always changing and thinking and reading, but I still felt pretty comfortable with it. Once I put it out into the world, I felt very, very at peace with it because I thought, well, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm not trying to change your mind about anything, or this is just what I believe. This is how I've gotten through. And I think, people, because I am writing from a Christian perspective, a Catholic perspective, many people have told me they were very surprised that I wasn't trying to change their thoughts or I wasn't trying to convert them in some way. So I don't know what the perception is. Well, I guess the perception is not great, for people. So, they felt that I might be acting holier than thou, or, oh, I've got this answer, or, you should do it this way. And that is the farthest thing from my mind that I want to do. I'm just trying to take care of myself. So I've really enjoyed that feedback on the memoir, that even though I was talking about my own depths, that even people who identify differently, Jewish, atheist, agnostic, Buddhist, people they can still read it and get something out of it. And that is something I'm really proud of, because that was one of my goals. And I think in this time of division, we're living in a world, everything is so divided. And it comes down to divisions of faith as well, not just politics, not just red and blue, not just Democrat and Republican, all of that. There's so much suspicion and, cynicism towards each other. And so I'm hoping that we can start to heal that. And I'm hoping I can be a part of that in whatever small way I can be.
I know reading the memoir myself. I mean, I never felt like you were preaching to me. I really felt your vulnerability and that you had found something that was working for you at that time.
Right.
And I didn't feel like it was something you were so locked into. You know what I mean? I really felt like you have a fluid, spiritual perspective. And, I just kind of felt like, well, this is neat. I'm learning some things I wasn't aware of, but I never felt like that. I really felt connected on the level of, this vulnerability. And I think for any of us, it's helpful to see how someone else, made it through that. And so you weren't saying, everybody has to use this particular resource, but, this is what helped me. And so I think that's really important. When it comes to favorite writers in the genre, I was thinking back today, some that I read, and I think I was telling you earlier, like it can be a little confusing between memoir and autobiography. One of the big ones that was making the rounds, not all that long ago, was Tara Westover's Educated.
Yeah.
Which was really popular. And I just finished recently Trevor Noah's Born a Crime.
I didn't get to read that. Did you like it?
I liked it a lot.
I love him.
I did too. I liked it a lot. It was really good, really informative too. And I love when you get into other cultures.
Yeah.
Somebody who has had a very different experience, from myself. And then, I like Michelle Obama's Becoming. And then there's just the ones that we know from like Frank McCourt's Angela's Ashes.
Absolutely.
And, Mary Carr, The Liars Club, things like that, we've probably either studied in school or you kind of know Jeanette Wells, the Glass Castle. So I wonder who you've been influenced by, and do you try to, whatever it is you admire about them or that writer, do you try to incorporate that into your own writing in some way?
I love those people that you named so much. I've had so many conversations with people, very, not heated, but passionate conversations about which was better, The Liars Club or The Glass Castle. People be like, which was better? And I love the reasons why people say, I vote Glass Castle. And I teach the Glass Castle. I'm teaching it right now, and it's very, very difficult. But the thing about the Glass Castle that I think has made it last the way it has is that she chose to, you get a flashback in the beginning. So you get, she's all hoity-toity with her pearls driving through New York and sees her mom picking through the trash can. So you get present day. And then once she flips it back into the childhood, she never brings it up into present day until it organically reaches present day. So the movie shifted back and forth between past and present. So it completely disrupted that artistic choice. But when she made that choice to just start, I'm cooking hot dogs. I'm 3 years old and I was cooking hot dogs. So it's past tense, but no apparent author interference. The entire book is amazing to me. I've looked at this for hundreds of hours, and what that does for me is it's like the ultimate in irony, because we see what's wrong with this family, but they're just doing their thing, and so we're so tense about it. And She never ever comes in and says, oh my God, my dad was such a jerk. Oh my God, my mother was such a narcissist. She never labels them. There's never there. It's the illusion that the story is just being told. Of course, it's an illusion because she's writing the story. But I think that was a brilliant choice that she made and that she stuck with it. And the first version of my memoir, I tried that and I really didn't pull it off. I could not pull it off to just get on that train and keep going without reflection. My first couple of drafts, it just didn't work like that. So the book that I feel in terms of, well, I'm older now, so it used to be 20th century literature, but now it's also 21st century literature. Like, whoa, like this is the 21st century. We have to figure this out too. But I think in American letters, the best memoir is Richard Wright's Black Boy. I think that is hands down the most successful memoir because he makes so many interesting artistic choices there, and he mixes it up. There's different things. So, for example, very early on in the book, he talks about his relationship with his father who abandons him, and he doesn't wait until the end of the book to talk about seeing his dad like way later in life. He completes it there, and it's just this devastating portrait of his father having aged. He's powerless. He's basically a sharecropper. He's wearing these overalls. He's got no real personal power whatsoever. And it's just devastating because you read the scenes where his father, when he's little, his father has all this power over him and is shaming him and humiliating him. Well, who does this guy end up as later? Nothing. And it's just such an incredible look at what time does to people and what time does to the stories that warp us, how the stories themselves change and twist. So, and he makes many stylistic choices in there that are just incredible to me. His dialogue, when he does come in and he'll overlay something, the adult Richard will say like, from this situation, I learned this and this and this and this and this, and I became hardened and yet blah, blah, blah. And, so I think it's one of the most brilliant because you get a sense of what Jim Crow Mississippi was like, but you also just see it in the hands of just this brilliant writer. So I just love it. I just love what he does.
I actually have not read that, so that's a good recommendation. I definitely will, and I have often, have had that on my list for a while.
But that being said, too, I just want to say, like, in terms of this year, not really being able to read very much, my favorite book of this past year was Elton John's memoir. So I love it. Was called Me. So well written. Like Elton John, it was so well done. And I just loved it. And then I just got Sinead O'Connor's memoir just came out, and I started that, and it's really good. So yeah, I do like these rock memoirs also. But again, this past year, it's just been hard for me to pay attention. I think other people, I know some people who were able to read. I just wasn't one of them.
Right. I'm thinking about memory, obviously, for memoir, because that's what it is, like a series of memories. How accurate do you feel responsible? Do you have a responsibility to that? And so, are you actually going back and talking to other people? I know Tara Westover talked about that a little bit because her stories were so shocking in some ways. She went back and talked to, her brothers or her sister, or if she could, about them. And everybody seems to have a little bit different memory, obviously. So I'm wondering how you think about that and what you did yourself to.
Well, I think that's such a great question. And I can feel my reaction too, where it's just, I can't imagine checking in with anybody about my memories because I guess I would be afraid of the pain being minimized. If that was there, I'd be afraid of that. But I trust my memories to be the accurate / inaccurate pieces of substance that they are. You know, I feel like I have a right to all sorts of things. I mean, I guess I sort of think that memory is very poetic, and you might not remember it exactly. We're not like, we don't put cameras on something and make tapes. That's not memories.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just visual. It's sensory, it's emotion, it's somebody's intent, it's somebody's energy. All that stuff comes at us and like locks that memory inside. So I will say, though, since my dad died in December, and then my book came out in February, there's not much about, there's a few things in my book about my dad that I was nervous about my siblings reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave them a heads up. I said, you know, I just want you to know that I was honest about a few things with Dad. And I left like it was the tiniest thing in there. And my brother was very, very supportive of the whole thing. And we have shared, since my dad died, we've been sharing some memories, and it's been kind of hard. You know, there's some stuff there, but
Mm-hmm.
I find that fascinating that anybody would actually even ask somebody else, because you know, like Dorothy Allison has a great quote that, you know, writing about memories just basically erases the memories, because then your memories become what you've written. And I think that's true. And that used to scare me, but now it doesn't bother me anymore.
One of the things that I find in reading in the memoir is, and I think this helped me as the reader, like, not question, well, first of all, the stories weren't, you know, that outlandish that, you know, you would think they couldn't possibly be true. But you do a very good job of grounding with, one of my favorite things is bringing in a lot of nature.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're talking about walking those certain paths, you know, you really ground us with the water and the trees and what was happening to the land,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in your walking spaces. And so I think that, you know, for me, that made it real. It helped that element of truth, you know, to it, because, you know, that's something that I'm attracted to, and I can relate to it. So when I'm reading that, you know, it kind of takes me in mind of, you know, my memories and how they're anchored sometimes in a setting.
Definitely. And you're really good about that, Karen. I love that in your work, that there's always like your characters, the feelings they have towards their landscapes show me who the characters are, because how they feel about it shows them that they're sensitive people, that they're good people, that they're broken people, that sort of thing. So I think in your work, you're very, very good at that, getting that. It's how it gets locked together, character and setting, character and landscape. And I know you love playing with that too, right?
Yeah. And thanks for saying that. As you're talking about that, it reminded me of you and I going out and walking in the rain in Ireland through Carlow Town, and the dogs following us. And how that, like, again, you know, my memories of that are so often anchored in the landscape, you know, and the setting that we were in. So, you know, I think that really brings an element to your writing that you're really good at.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, because I was worried about those sections being boring.
No, not at all. I actually, you know, like I said, I really like it. Before we have to get into a prompt, if you'll leave us with a prompt, but if you can kind of quickly tell us the difference, because I actually was looking this up myself today, because I started thinking about the books I was just telling you about, and I'm like, wait, is that a memoir or an autobiography? And so maybe you can tell us, you know, it seems to be there's a slight difference between them.
Yeah, the way I understand it. And I don't know if there's a real hardcore. It's sort of like, remember in flash fiction, it used to be like 1,500 words, and then it became 500 words. Then micro became 300 words. Like, it gets all confusing. Well, what is it? With autobiography and memoir, I think people tend to think of autobiography as being, I was born in Tarrytown in 1960, to Carolee O'Brien and Jack O'Brien. That's, to me, autobiography. But it's more linear, I guess. Like, you think of somebody's life as having a beginning, middle, and an end, where memoir would be, for example, the way Jeanette Walls handled it. Just, I'm in a cab in New York City. Here I am, I'm a grown woman. I'm in a cab in New York City. And I think memoir gives you a lot more flexibility, and sort of like, then where does creative nonfiction come in? What's the difference between memoir and creative nonfiction? So I don't know where these lines are, but I think memoir gives you a chance to be more experimental as a writer, and be more organically sort of invested in the events you want to cover. You don't have to do it sequentially, and you don't have to cover the whole life. You can choose the epiphanies,
right,
or the traumas, whatever you want to choose. I think it gives you more free range.
Yeah, I was thinking of a memoir as being more about covering the memories of a certain period of transformation,
right,
rather than a chronological account. Like you said, I was born, the blah, 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 and this happened. And so I can see where you have a more wiggle room, and you can keep maybe a tighter focus in memoir to cover, a particular theme, or
I feel like it gives you more freedom. And I don't really even hear the word autobiography that much anymore.
No.
I don't even hear it used that much, but mostly memoir, and then creative nonfiction, which I don't really understand. I've read creative nonfiction. I think it's really great, but sometimes I get lost in it. Sometimes it's a little more academic for me than what I really want to be reading. But I love memoir. I do. I love the form of memoir, and I love what people have done with it. And Frank Mccourt, you mentioned Frank Mccourt, and really that's a brilliant. Angela's Ashes is a brilliant work of art, because it's all auditory. Like, almost the whole story is really auditory, and I really admire that as somebody who has struggled to get stronger with my dialogue. Frank McCourt's one of my favorite people. I got to see him a couple years before he passed. He came to Hartford, and he did this talk with Toni Morrison. Can you believe that?
Great. Wow.
Just them on a stage talking for a night.
Oh my gosh.
It was, I will never, ever
How
forget
wonderful.
that. It was the best.
Yeah, that's such a gift when you get to see, speakers live, someone that you admire, and a lot of times it's a once in a lifetime.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm so glad I went to that.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Maureen, as we get ready to wrap up, do you have and I hope if we do this again, you'll come back in, because we could talk for hours, obviously.
So great to see
so
you.
Interesting. If you can leave us with a prompt, and I just want to, before we do, remind everyone that tomorrow night, again at 6, we're going to be talking with author Jen Gavon. She's going to be covering the novel for us. I believe she has 2 novels out. And on Friday, we're going to wrap the week up with Lorinda Lynn covering poetry. So I think those will be very exciting and
excellent.
Very informative. Great. Yeah. So when you're ready, Maureen, go ahead. Go
great.
for it.
No, great. So one of a very successful writing prompt that I've had with my students is basically try and just tell the story of the first time you realized one of your parents was in fact human. When did you realize they were human? And these usually end up being sort of like coming of age stories, because usually you don't realize your parents are human until probably at least 8, 9, 10, but usually 12, 13, 14. So you get that intersection of adolescence, awakening and loss and all of that. So thinking about a time when you first realized that your parents were really human, for me, it was when I was 18, my brother was 12. My little brother, he's fine today. He was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I had never seen my dad cry before. And it was like a game changer. I had never witnessed that. And, so I've written about that. I recently published an article on miracles in St. Anthony's Messenger about that time. So that first time you realize your parents are human, it's such a great prompt, because it's got all the things I love, loss, innocence to experience, loss, lots of conflict usually. So I feel like it kind of just goes to an explosive place, and also a place where you can really reflect. So I love that prompt, and my students have done some beautiful, beautiful responses to that.
That's a great prompt, Maureen. We do have a comment before we close out. Barb Maloney said, "This was such a compelling interview. Maureen, I can't wait to read your memoir. You helped with my own belief that I would be surrendering power if I wrote about my own personal experience."
Wow.
And so I think that's a common thing for anybody that wants to write like that. So I think seeing somebody that's brave, that goes ahead of you,
Good luck.
can really help us.
I support you in that. Whatever, I really support you in just doing that. We have a right to take up space, and we have the right to our stories. They're beautiful stories, and we're good people, and we can speak.
Yeah, Maury, Barb's a beautiful person, and her stories, she's very creative and would have some amazing stories to share with us. So again, I hope everyone will join us tomorrow and Friday evening. Look below the presentation. There's some information about Maureen's book and her Instagram handle, as well as my website. And
the world has changed so much since we were in Ireland.
I know.
There wasn't even any Instagram. Now, like, I have an Instagram handle. Oh my gosh.
Well, remember being on our Irish time? Like, you just never knew you could go to the store if it was supposed to open at 9. Maybe it would be open, maybe it wouldn't be. Oh gosh, that was such a wonderful experience.
Oh my gosh, so
beautiful.
So I know. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Really, it was just so beautiful and so rich. We were so blessed to have that time, and I think we knew it at the time. That's what made it even better, is that we knew it.
Yeah, I enjoyed every minute of it, and I knew to enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah.
It was just so magical. Okay, Maureen, I guess we have to end.
All
I
right,
could talk
thank
to
you
you for
so much.
hours.
I really appreciate you having me. Thank you for such a great conversation. It's so great to see you.
Yeah, and I will talk with you soon. And
right.
Again, I will invite you back if we do this again.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maureen.
All right. Good night.